Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced, Vice Chair of the Libertarian National Committee, that guy from AlexMerced.com, that programmer from AlexMercedCoder.com. I wear a lot of hats. But what I want to do is just reflect a little bit on this whole coronavirus situation. Because I'm hearing all sorts of, thrilling hot takes, and so I just want to kind of grab a few takeaways, okay? One is the seriousness of the situation. I mean, the situation is serious, not because most people are going to die, but what makes why the situation, why the measures being taken are being taken, is because of the scalability of the healthcare system. And we'll come back to that, because there is a lot of reasons why, so basically the situation is people are getting the disease at a rate that's resulting in hospitals being overwhelmed. So anything you can do to slow down the rate of people getting infected and having to go to the hospital can then reduce the amount that hospitals are overwhelmed. Because when hospitals are overwhelmed, not everyone's going to be able to get the care they need to survive. So then more people will die than necessarily would have to if you can slow down the rate so hospitals can better manage the amount of people that are coming in, because they're coming in at a more even pace. Okay, so that's sort of the goal. I mean, not that it's been very successful, but again, that's counterfactual. You don't know how it would have been had nothing been done. So arguing whether the measures did or didn't have the effect that they wanted to, or whether it would have been better or worse, I don't know how productive that conversation is. But it does highlight a few things. Because in a lot of what's happened to try to scale the healthcare system to deal with this crisis, a lot of it's been having to ignore regulations or temporarily disbar regulations or ignore rules that were set in place long ago. And it was those rules that sort of prevented the scaling of the healthcare system in the first place, preventing us from, being more prepared than we were. I mean, there's other situations in the sense that, you had economic situations that where certain states didn't scale as much as they would have because they were in not as good fiscal situations because of fiscal mismanagement at, at different levels, not just government, but, all across the different actors in any economy. But I mean, that's one takeaway in the sense that, if there was a situation in which you can kind of say, okay, I can see some sort of mass aid response being justified, some sort of massive redistribution of wealth being justified, this is kind of it. Okay, I'm not saying that it is justified, but I'm just saying, like, if there was one, this is it. Because everyone's suffering. Everything affects everyone, and it's nobody's fault. Okay, the fact that this coronavirus exists and it's spreading as fast as it can, it's a natural phenomenon. It's a natural. So businesses that are suffering, it's not their fault. Individuals who are suffering, it's not their fault. And the thing is that it's such a massive amount of people that this is affecting, that again, you can see the logic behind it. At least you can fathom the case. But again, that's just the case. The idea is, okay, I got it. I can see why that would be this. If there was a time where it's persuasive, this is the time. But you see that it's still politics as usual. Okay, the minute they try to do a bill to help, the bill gets muddied by politics. What happens in politics? Every time you try to do anything, everyone has to step in there and say, what about me? Everyone has to carve out their little piece. But that comes out at expense of the core thing you were trying to do. So at the end, you end up with a watered down response. Okay? And you end up with a response that ends up also doing a bunch of other things that arguably may be damaging or worse, or be creating all sorts of other power imbalances, because politicians are buying favors and basically buying relationships with other people through this bill. Okay, and this is the problem with political solutions. Okay, yeah, you can get this massive watered down response, but you know what would have been nice if a lot of these barriers and rules weren't in place, so that way other organizations, because everyone has a stake in helping in this situation. Okay, every business has a stake in everything getting back to business as normal. Every individual wants to get back to work, wants to have a life and not have to hang out in their apartment again. Everyone has a stake in this getting better. But everyone's been kind of not stripped of their freedom. I mean, again, it's been a slow drip of our ability to have the autonomy to address this. And then, yes, one of the best things we can do is stay home. Yes, I 100% agree. Social distancing, wash your hands, not twice, not not once, not twice, but thrice. Just do what you got to do to stay clean, stay safe. 100% agree. But at the same time, businesses are responding and trying to find ways to help, because again, it's in their interest. Individuals are looking for ways to help, and all those responses happen quicker. They don't need to go through this bureaucratic process. So we need this massive, huge response that we're looking for to keep things on an even keel without things falling apart. It isn't going to necessarily come from a massive government action. Not saying that that doing nothing is necessarily better at this point. Okay, considering again a lot of the barriers and institutional barriers that exist that prevent us from just naturally being able to deal with this aren't going to go away tomorrow. A lot of them have been temporarily set aside, but they aren't going to all go away tomorrow. And time is kind of the essence in this particular situation. But I don't think it necessarily, if anything, it just illustrates the case of all the stuff that happens. Oh, so that's what happens when you live in New York City, like the worst place to be right now. But basically, you end up, if anything, you can justify some sort of action now. But if anything, this highlights why most actions were bad in the past, because many of the actions of the past of government are now coming to roost, as far as creating barriers to responses, creating a slow response. I mean, take a look at the slowdown with like the FDA process. Taking a look at different relationships and other institutions that are causing, like, you hear about all these stories. I hear stories about people in like the New York City government not being able to get what they need at lower levels in the New York City government because of bureaucracy with the state government, and the state government not being able to get things it needs because of bureaucracy with the federal government. So all these bureaucratic layers are preventing from aid and holding things up. And then private actors have pretty much been in some places been barred or prevented from dealing with these situations. So a lot of those actions in the past have affected our ability to deal with the situation the way in a better way now. Not that I think would have been necessarily dramatically better. This is just not something you plan for per se. Okay, because literally planning for a situation like this, most of the time can cost a lot more than the actual situation. There's a trade-off. Okay, you can't plan for everything, so you end up planning for the things that are more likely to happen. But when the things that are unlikely to happen, it sucks, and you're caught unprepared, and it's very much what the situation is. But yeah, so it's a mixed bag. Again, I totally understand the calls for aid, but again, I totally see the political process doing what it always does. Even in the time when you think people would put politics aside the most, it isn't, which is frankly, unfortunately, vindicating, because in a situation like this, I'd actually rather be wrong. I'd actually rather be wrong and actually see government be able to do something helpful. Not that I don't appreciate Andrew Cuomo's bed manner. Again, there's a difference between his ability to speak and be a calming figure, which I do appreciate. I think he actually has done that pretty well, versus whatever is actually happening behind the scenes, where the bottlenecks are coming from, policies that he's put into place that might be affecting us now. That's a different story. But I don't disagree that when I take a look at the way he's handled press conferences versus the way Trump's handled press conferences, which one I found more comforting. But I haven't really found much comforting during these days, because the reality is everyone's just trying to use this to score political points despite what's on the line. And you're starting to see, it's not just affecting, the older population. You're starting to see younger, healthier people, maybe a much lower number, but even some younger, healthier people are passing away without necessarily having underlying illnesses or other situations. So this is scary. And again, it's not about preventing it entirely. It's probably, but again, the idea is by slowing down the spread, two things happen. One, hospitals can deal with the people, so they'll have enough ventilators, so that way less people have to die. And then two, the chances of maybe some sort of better treatments, better vaccines, or a vaccine being available down the road, by slowing things down, more people may make it and not catch the virus up to that point. Okay, There are things that I think are good ideas that I've heard, like testing people to see who already has the antibodies. But again, this all comes down to, this is not a matter of what's a good idea anymore. It's a matter of capacity. When everyone's staying home, you just don't have the ability to create. And then if you just give everybody a bunch of money, it doesn't necessarily mean there's more stuff. So when everyone's being sent home and no one's making stuff, and everyone's being given money to buy the stuff that's still left, it's just going to be less stuff afterwards. We're all going to be poor afterwards. There's still an argument to be made that at least in the short run, it'll prevent the unrest. So basically, if you don't do nothing at all, yes, either way, you're not necessarily repairing the productive capacity of the economy, but you might have more social unrest if people don't get any aid at all, which can result in extra violence or violence earlier, riots, that kind of thing. So I can sympathize with that. Again, if there's if there was a situation where this kind of thing was sympathetic and in theory, like you can imagine the case for it, this is it. But again, if anything, when you take a look at reality and you take a look at things in practice, it just kind of, again, vindicates a lot of these things I've been saying over the years about the political process, about the government's ability to respond quickly. And I mean, they're responding quicker than I've ever seen them respond to anything before, but it's still not fast enough for the situation. And a lot of the actors that can respond faster are oftentimes don't have the legal flexibility to do so. And while they've been given more flexibility, not enough. And again, a lot of the regulations in the healthcare system, a lot of for example, there was I think a hospital school where now they're letting people who would normally have to wait like another 3-6 months before they can even start their medical career. They're just saying, hey, you're good, you got your license, go get to work. Okay. If they were capable of doing that job if it was such a danger before that they would have to wait another 6 months before they can start the job, then why would you have them start now? And if they're capable of starting now, why would you make them wait another 6 months before they can actually contribute to the medical system? These are the kind of questions that this is highlighting. It's like, if all these rules mattered so much normally, then why is it okay that we're breaking them now? Because don't you think those dangers that we worried about would be just as apparent, and if we are able to suspend them now, and basically it's only to our benefit, then why would we reinstitute them back after this? So that's sort of the bigger question. Like a lot of these, again, rules that are being lifted, a lot of these regulations that are being sort of bypassed, really raises that question of like how much of all of this bureaucracy is really unnecessary. But it's going to be rough because, again, you have a portion of time in which people are not producing as much, and no amount of money you can sit there and give banks as much money as you want. The government can monetize all of its debt, but it doesn't change the time loss of production. Okay, so that means down the road you may have some cash in your pocket, but there won't necessarily be as much stuff to buy. And the stuff that is going to be available, it's going to be more expensive because there just isn't as much to go around, at least for a period of time. Now, once things get back, eventually things will balance themselves out. But there's going to be a lot of pain in the meantime. Again, you can't make up the actual creation of stuff in the time that it took. That's a loss. It may be a loss, a worthwhile loss, because again, it's not always just a dollar for dollar economic calculation. So it may be worth the lives saved and the human and the connections and the human benefit of having those people still alive. To most people, might be worth that trade-off. They should, but it's going to be rough. There is a trade-off. There is a cost, and the question is, where was there a midpoint? Was there could have there been a lesser action where you could have balanced out both interests more? Or maybe have we not reached that point yet? Maybe we didn't, again, we can only pontificate on what that trade-off is and where we are along that chart, that theoretical line. So I'm not going to sit here and say, sir, it's like, too much government. Yes, in general, I still believe that, the bureaucratic political process ends up always doing more damage than good in the long run. And to me, this is only vindicated by saying all the struggles government has had, oftentimes because of things they put in place in the past. Okay? So even though, while I can sympathize with the idea, and again, if there was a time for government to act, this is the sort of the time where I'd be most sympathetic to it. Even government's ability to own act has been hurt by all the actions people wanted government to take in the past. Whether it's not just instituting regulations, but also spending and having deficits, that hamper. Because right now, again, if a government wants to spend infinite amounts of money, basically normally what you'd have to do is you'd have to sell debt. But no one else is buying debt right now because everyone else is in the same situation. Literally everyone is spending, every government spending everything they can to deal with this. So what other government's going to lend you money? So that means the only other alternative you have is to monetize the debt. So that means thus we see the 0% interest rates from the Fed, because they're going to have to buy up all that government debt, so the banks keep buying it. And in the short run, that won't cause inflation because people aren't going to be spending money in the short run. People are going to be too scared to consume. But damn it, will it cause malinvestment down the road, and sow the seeds for something else. And that trade-off may be worth it. Okay, that trade-off you may say, hey, the pain you're delaying now may be worth the pain you're causing later to some. But again, that trade-off might have been a lot less had we done a lot less stupid things in the past that made our ability to respond a lot worse now. That made who could respond a lot fewer. How they can respond a lot smaller in scope. Those actions that have limited our options and our ability to take action quickly. So those are my reflections. This is an unfortunate situation. I really hope all of you stay safe. I don't want to argue with people. I have not been arguing with people on Facebook because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. If you're dead, does it really matter that you are a libertarian, conservative, or progressive? No. So at this point, it's just a matter of us trying to keep each other alive. But it does matter that we do learn our lessons along the way and point out the lessons to be learned, so that way, when this mess is all over, we can make better choices as a society. And to me, I'm more vindicated than ever that the best way to make the best choices for society is to have as many people making choices as possible in every aspect of their lives. So that way, again, you just have many more options when you're in a situation like this. Cool. So that's my thoughts. I'm sure some of you are going to disagree with me. So some of you might disagree with me greatly. But I figured maybe something I said might be worth hearing. So you guys have a great day. Enjoy.